flow.
Welcome to episode 131 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. The Toronto Maple Leafs have won 3 of their last 4 games, but they still sit 4th in the Atlantic Division, on pace for 98 points. They're kind of mediocre right now, but we are going to give you our thoughts and opinions on everything going on with the Leafs. The resurgence of Ilya Samsonov. Where the hell did that come from? Ryan Reeves, who was healthy, and the Leafs just said, screw you, and decided that they didn't want to activate him off IR. They finally did. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Brad Treliving's offseason as we get closer to the All-Star break. Been kind of a disaster, honestly. So we're going to get into that. And then, of course, we are going to talk about the Edmonton Oilers, who, as of recording this podcast, are riding a 14-game winning streak. They're probably going to make it 15 in a row against the Chicago Blackhawks. But we have a lot to get into, and I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end. But before we get into all that, it is time to officially welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Doing very well, Anthony Bruno. As always, happy to be here. Little sore, man. We got some freezing rain here in Ottawa, and it defrosted. So the laneway was an absolute disaster. One slip away from someone cracking their head open on my property. So took care of it, and my arms and legs are paying the price. It's not as fit as I used to be, Bruno. And I guess shoveling the driveway is the measuring stick.
Lepore, that's your exercise these days, man. You're on the ice with the kids, and then you're shoveling your driveway.
Yeah, it's brutal, right? Because when it's snow, it's fine. I mean, is this the most ultimate Canadian conversation ever? Yeah, when it's snow, it's fine. But when you get the snow with the freezing rain and then it melts and it's watery, man, it was not fun. It was not fun. Oh, by the way, Bruno, I'm proud of you. I see a Randy Moss picture in the background. So, your boy Tommy, your boy System Tom got replaced by one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. So good for you, Bruno. It's about time you smarten up.
Yeah, Lepore, I told you off air when you saw my new set that it was a placeholder. And I told you, just wait, I'm going to replace it. And now I got my favorite football player of all time.
Favorite?
Randy Moss. Oh, yeah.
Favorite.
He's number 1.
Yeah.
Most dominant receiver ever. Better than Jerry Rice, by the way.
Okay, well, that's another pod, Bruno. You got to be careful. You got to be careful, especially before NFC Championship weekend. So, but,
I know, and I'm talking to one of the biggest 49ers fans I know. So I'll we'll save that for the football podcast. That's going to be in the works at some point. Who knows when that's going to happen? But let's jump right into the hockey talk before people get pissed off here. So let's just jump right into how the Leafs are playing right now, because when we came into our last podcast, they were riding a 4-game losing streak, and people were pissed off. People were already thinking about, like, oh my God, this team might miss the playoffs. What's going on? Is Sheldon Keefe going to get fired? But since then, the Leafs have 3 wins in their last 4 games. They've beaten the Calgary Flames, the Seattle Kraken, and the Winnipeg Jets. So 3 solid wins. I know Hellebuck was not playing in the game against Winnipeg, but still, I think there's some positives that we can take away from this last little streak. Listen, I still don't think the Leafs are that good, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Again, eye test, numbers, whatever you want to look at. This team is just kind of okay. Like, I still think they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't view them as an actual serious contender at this point. So I just want to get your thoughts now that we've gone through another week of Leafs hockey.
More of the same, man. They are consistently inconsistent. And I think that's maybe even a compliment for them, because they never look that good. Like, even when they get wins, they get outplayed, they get bailed out somehow. It's close. We've been over this, Bruno. We can count on 1 or 2 hands how many very good performances they've had this season. And it's a collection of things. Some people are pointing to the lineup. Some people are pointing to the coaching staff. Some people have pointed to goaltending. It's all of it. And it's hard for Leafs fans to have a lot of confidence right now. I mean, here we are. I'm sure a lot of Leaf fans this morning were walking with a strut because hey, they got to win against one of the best teams in the league. Sammy saved the day. The Leafs had no business winning that game. That was probably the best game of his career. So we're that away from losing and ending the shutout streak, or the non-shutout streak, I should say. Um, but changes have to be made. Like I think I've come to that in my mind as a Leafs fan. Something has to be done because this is a team going into the season and going into the last few seasons, people were considering a contender to win the Stanley Cup. And I remember Ryan Whitney from Spin Chicklets, he tweeted after all the signings, the Leafs are going to be a problem. So his character is kind of a Leafs hater. And here he was saying, you know what? This Leafs team's going to look good. And they have not. So it can't be a waste. And I'd like to think Brad is active to clean stuff up or ship stuff out the door. I don't know. Like at this point, there might be some addition by subtraction, but I expect a lot to happen. And I really hope a lot is going to happen between now and the trade deadline because they're not good enough. Their talent is getting them by. That's the only reason why they're not in a bad spot right now. That's the gap. The Leafs have talent that's carrying them. There's been a lot of bad this year, man. And we've been blessed with good regular seasons anyway lately as Leafs fans. And as far as expectations go, this has been a bad regular season.
Yeah, when you stack it up against the last few regular seasons, 111 points. It was 110 or 111, 115.
115.
Then the COVID year where they were on pace for that same range between 110, 115 points. Now you're looking at like a sub 100 point team. Now that we've reached, we're past the halfway point of the season right now. We're about to hit the All-Star break. Also, off the top of the show, I think I said the Leafs are fourth in the Atlantic Division. They're technically third in the Atlantic Division.
Nice.
Kind of feels like they're in fourth. It's just weird how them and the Lightning are fighting for this third spot. I mean, the Lightning, I think we thought would be in this spot, but we thought that the Leafs were going to be like the runaway winner of this division, and that's not the case right now. But no, you nailed it, man. There's not a lot going on that's positive right now with this hockey team outside of the star players, really. When you look at the secondary scoring, and I want to pull up this tweet.
Oh, no.
If you follow Leafs Twitter, you probably know this guy, Kevin Papetti. I was just looking at this tweet today and I couldn't believe my eyes. So he said, not much secondary scoring lately. And he went down the list of all the players who have done jack shit in the last little while. So David Kemp, 0 goals in 19 games. Noah Gregor, 0 goals in 17 games. Matthew Nye, 0 goals in 14 games. Tyler Bertuzzi, 0 goals in 13 games. John Tavares, 0 goals in 10. Calle Yarncroke, 0 in 9. And Max Domi, 1 goal in his last 16 games. So outside of Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, really no one is providing anything offensively.
Yeah.
And if that tweet doesn't tell you the story of how this season has gone so far, I don't know what does. I think that perfectly tells the story of this Leafs team. The secondary scoring, the players that Brad Treliving brought in the offseason have not helped this team one bit. So even though Matthews is still on pace for 67, 68 goals, it just feels like on a night-to-night basis, this team's still chasing the play, not dominating games. Now, against the Canucks, Lepore, as I pull up the numbers here, they outshot the Canucks pretty badly, actually. That was the one game where I was like, wow, they're actually taking it to the Canucks. That was a weird game where Jones played like shit. Demko didn't play very well, but the Leafs outshot the Canucks 46-21.
I think the Canucks scored their 6th goal on their 19th shot.
Yeah. It was something crazy like that. So that was the one game where I was like, this is the old Leafs, firing all these shots, controlling most of the play. But too many times this season, Lepore, it's just been a whole lot of, if Matthews, Marner, or Nylander are not doing anything, then this team has no hope in hell of winning a hockey game.
Yeah, and lately especially, right? The power play has been shit. So we can't even rely on that. I mean, you mentioned Tavares. So it's no goals in 10. Is it no points in 9 or something? Like
I'll have
this is
to
getting
double
out of
check that, but it is pretty bad.
this is getting out of control for John Tavares to go this long without a point. What was the longest stretch of his career? It was like 5 or 6 games. And now he's getting into double digits. And you can point right to the power play not clicking because that's where he gets his cookies.
Roses are red, violets are blue. Trim your balls and your date will thank us too. Fellas, Valentine's Day is right around the corner. And what better way to get prepared than using Manscaped's new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra. With the new Lawnmower 5.0, you cannot go wrong. Get ready for Valentine's Day, and not even just Valentine's Day. Just get your year off to a good start here and actually look good, feel good, and play good. So use our exclusive promo code GFP20 at manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping. Lepore, I mean, what else could you say about Manscaped?
We all know the deal, Bruno. Valentine's Day comes up. Guys are scrambling. I gotta get her flowers. I gotta get her chocolate. Yeah, do that. But also do the right thing and give the gift of clean, smooth balls. Head over to manscaped.com. There's a ton of products. They're all good. Throw them in the cart. GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
Get ready for Valentine's Day, fellas. Use our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. So go to manscaped.com right now while you're at it. There's no better time than right now. Use our code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
It's not good, man. I don't know. Like, I'll put it this way. If we look at the Eastern Conference right now and the teams that are, comfortably in playoff spots and even fighting for playoff spots for that matter, do you think the Leafs are a favorite against any of them? Or would you pick the Leafs or you think the Leafs have a chance? I mean, it's not good. It's not good. And I have to see the list in front of me, but the ones I'm just thinking off quickly in my head, the ones near the top, I'm like, no, they beat us over 7 games. There's no way.
I think the only team that I would, and I'm not even that confident in this, that I would take over the Leafs in a 7-game series, or that I would take the Leafs to beat, I should say, in a 7-game series. That's what I meant to say, is Philadelphia.
Okay.
They're currently third in the Metropolitan. No one expected them to have the season they're having. I don't know how the hell John Tortorella has worked his magic with this team, because I thought they were going to be terrible this season. That's the one team, like, let's say, and again, there's like no chance that they would play each other in the first round of the playoffs. But just looking at the Eastern Conference in general, I'm taking the Bruins to beat the Leafs in a 7-game series. I'm taking the Panthers to beat the Leafs. I'm taking the Lightning to beat the Leafs, even though they haven't been playing that well. I'm taking Carolina, the Rangers, probably taking the Devils over the Leafs. So basically the teams that are kind of in a playoff spot or hovering around a playoff spot, I think I'd only take the Leafs over Philly and the Islanders at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of hard to argue against, but we know hockey's crazy, right? In a few months, we're going to be sitting in the Eastern Conference final, and it's going to make no sense. They're going to turn it on at the right time, and our goalie will have a 9.48 save percentage in the playoffs, and no one will have an explanation. But bad times, man. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing because this is where Leafs fans sit. Here we are watching this team, and it's not like it's been a complete disaster, but it almost like I almost can't picture it being worse. Like, based on the talent they have on the roster, it's like, well, they wouldn't be like terrible. They wouldn't be a 500 team or like projected to get 80 points. And I went behind enemy lines the other night, Bruno. Some friends of mine.
Did.
Yeah, well, you're not the ones you're thinking, or semi. So some friends of mine, they do it every year. One of them is a big Montreal Canadiens fan, and there's a few others naturally who are Ottawa Senators fans. And they'll drive to La Belle Provence to go see the Canadiens take on the Sens at the Centre Bell. And there was an extra ticket. Lepore was invited. So, you know what? Let's do it. So Lepore gets in a car, spends 2 hours in a car with Habs fans and Sens fans, goes a little shopping, go for lunch, you watch the game, and it's a blast. Anyone who hasn't been to the Bell Center for a game, it's an absolute blast. The crowd is great. And the light show, man. Like during the intermission, during the breaks, you feel like you're in a nightclub. It's so Montreal. It's amazing. But we're talking, teams that have been disappointing, and like here are Sens fans, like they are disappointed in how their season's gone. And one of them asked me, he's like, if the Leafs miss the playoffs, is that like the most disappointing thing this season from any hockey team? I'm like, it's debatable.
That's not a bad question. It's
That's
pretty
fair.
close, honestly.
Yeah, we said it was last week or a couple weeks ago, we had a discussion on like what was the most surprising, certain teams being good or certain teams being bad. If the Leafs missed the playoffs, if we were told that at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't believe it. I legit wouldn't believe it.
I think you're insane.
Yeah.
I would think that like the Leafs traded Nylander at the deadline. Like
Matthews
he didn't resign.
got hurt.
They just started selling guys off.
Yeah.
Not that they're going to sell off the whole team, but that would have been the first thing that came to my mind. Like, oh my God, they started like retooling this roster for real. But Jesus, if they miss the playoffs, that's going to rank pretty high just in terms of like the most disappointing outcomes of any of, I don't know, the top like 20 teams in the league this year.
If you had to guess their points total this year, what would you guess? Will they hit 100 points?
I think they'll probably hit 100, but yeah, like if you had to set the over under at this point, I should go check because I could probably find this on one of the sports books right now. It's probably sitting at like 98 and a half, 99 and a half right now. Like I think they probably find a way to hit 100. And again, like we've talked about how they have overcome a little bit of adversity this season with all the injuries to their goaltenders, Ilya Samsonov going from the worst goalie in the league to suddenly having like two of the best games of his career the last two nights.
Hockey.
So, they've gone through that. They've gone through the lack of secondary scoring, having to be carried by Austin Matthews and William Nylander for pretty much the entire season. And they're still, sitting around 100 points. I do think they hit 100, but I don't see this team, going on a crazy run and getting back to like, I don't know, that 110 point range. I don't think that's happening.
Can you see? And this is depressing. What I'm about to bring up, or to have to ask the question is depressing. Of all the guys in that depth, okay, like guys go through slumps, guys go through rough spots in the season. There's peaks and valleys, as we all know. Would you bet on any of them to turn it around? Or do you have any expectations? I do not, from what I've watched. Like, I don't think Bertuzzi all of a sudden is going to go on a tear and finish with, if he does go on a tear, what's he going to finish with? 20 goals? Domi, no. Nyes, no.
I don't have confidence in any of those guys. No. And that's what's so frustrating. If I was watching those guys on a nightly basis and like they were getting a ton of chances and generating a lot offensively, then I'd be like, you know what? They're just kind of snake bitten right now. Things are going to turn around, but they just don't do much at all on a night to night basis. Like even Bertuzzi, the opportunities he's had to play with this team's top players and to just put up goose eggs night after night is so frustrating because Domi's in a little bit of a different spot. He's played further down the lineup. He hasn't played with like the elite guys on a consistent basis. He hasn't really played much at all with like the top guys on this team, right? Just because he's been moved over to center. So Domi, he gets a little bit more of a pass. I've been obviously very disappointed with him as well, but Bertuzzi, man, holy shit. It's like, how many opportunities do you need to produce? I don't even know what his contract is going to look like next season. Like, is anyone giving that guy more than like 3 to 4 million a year? Because I think heading into this offseason, this past offseason, he was looking for like, 7-year deal for $5 million per. And the Leafs were like, all right, we'll give you a 1-year deal for $5.5 million. But holy cow, that guy's not getting more than like 3 or 4 million from anyone at this point. The guy has 6 goals. He's going to score like 13 goals this year? It's brutal, man. Brutal.
The way I see it, the way I've been kind of picturing it all year, we talk about, the guys we brought in, Domi, Bertuzzi being two of the big ones. Would you bring them back? Quick answer is no.
No, absolutely not.
Would you? The way I look at it, I'm like, Bertuzzi, you're 3 million on the third line, and Domi, you're 1 million on the fourth line. Like that's where they belong. That's where they belong. And what did Domi get last year? Like 56 or 55 points. And I think even in the playoffs, he was pretty good.
Yeah, he had like 13 points in 19 playoff games, I
Yeah.
believe.
How is that possible? Like for me watching him, I can't even picture that. More than a half a point a game? How? I don't get it. I don't get it. Call it the Toronto water, man. I don't know what you guys are doing over there, but it's not
So
working.
is it safe to say then, Lepore, that Brad Treliving's offseason was a colossal disaster? Like, is this worse than any offseason that Kyle Dubas ever had as Leafs GM?
Probably. Probably. Because I think if we went through Kyle's, each one, he had some bad deals, but there was also some good deals. With what Brad did, no, he swung and missed. If someone said to give it a letter grade, I'd give it a D. And the only reason why I'm not giving an F is because these guys weren't given term. And then people will bring up Reeves, but it's kind of different with his contract. But Klingberg, Bertuzzi, Domi, like those three, if they had term, it's an F. It's a hard F. So I'll give it a D because we know, and this is one of the conversations I had in the car on the way to Montreal. We know this team with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, and Riley leading the way can be a really good team. Can be 110, 115 point team, a team that people would not be surprised if they made a run at the cup. So it's not the end of the world because even if this year doesn't go well and we're not expecting it to, well, you kind of have a clean slate next year on how you move it around, how you adjust, and you get it and you get another shot. And that doesn't mean you're going to be successful, I think. And it's how the league works. It's a cap league. Teams have to go through that. But he's a D. I give it a D. And man, think if someone said, "Oh, I give him a C," I'd be like, "That's impossible." A C?
You can't.
No,
you can't give him. You can't give him higher than a D, honestly, because he swung and missed on literally every signing. Like even the David Kampf signing.
Yeah. Oh,
Like I'm not even talking about like the guys that he brought in from outside the organization. David Kampf, 4-year deal for 2.4 million. And at the time, like a lot of the math guys and analytics guys were like, this is kind of crazy. Like this is a little steep. Like Kampf is a nice serviceable player, but almost 2.5 million on a 4-year deal for this guy who's a zero offensively and is essentially just here to, I don't know, win faceoffs and kill penalties.
yeah. Kill time.
Like it's just like he's basically doing cardio out there most nights.
Oh,
He's not doing anything other than that. But you just go
yeah.
down the list, like Bertuzzi, swing and a miss, 1 year, 5.5 million. Max Domi, 1 year, 3 million, swing and a miss. John Klingberg, 1 year, shade over 4 million, swing and a miss.
See, the
Like,
Klingberg one, I think the Klingberg one, and these are maybe things you shouldn't say out loud. I think when they signed him, they knew he was hurt. I think they went into that one saying, we know this guy's hurt, but we know he can play. He can give it a go. If it works out, it works out. We're not giving him any term. And worst case scenario, he's LTIR. Now, the issue with that is now we got to fill that space. They have to make a move. People are forgetting that the Leafs are playing under the cap with Klingberg out. They haven't filled that money. So
yeah, and with Klingberg, so you're saying you think they had the Robidoux Island card in their back pocket the whole time with this guy?
Bruno, and I feel this way about the Leafs because we're just so friggin' corporate that there's no way these things just kind of go unnoticed or someone missed something. There's no way. There's too many eyes on all these moves. And to be fair, and I may take some shit for this one, I think it was the same with Matt Murray. They agreed with Ottawa. They're like, we'll take this guy off your hands. We know he's got his injury problems. You guys have to retain. And for us, if it works out, we get a goalie at 4 point whatever million, fine. And if it doesn't, he's LTIR.
Yeah, who knows, man?
They knew that.
I don't want to give the Leafs the benefit of the doubt because they haven't won shit since 1967. And
you're allowed to feel that way.
Nearly 20 years to win a playoff series. So
yeah.
I kind of don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I see where you're coming from because they are essentially the richest organization in hockey and they have more resources than pretty much any other team. So you would think that they would do their due diligence on this stuff. But then you look at a move like the Ryan Reeves signing. That was a red flag immediately. Like, this guy has not worked out pretty much like every stop that he's been at. Like, you are signing a 37-year-old enforcer basically for the vibes, basically to hope that he is going to rub off on your best players. But guess what? When your enforcer is playing 6 minutes a night and can't play hockey, I don't care how good he is in the room. I don't care how good he is at organizing team dinners and team outings and how great he is for the culture. And I don't care what his taste in music is and him becoming the team DJ and like upping the energy of the team on a daily basis. Like, none of that shit matters if this guy is playing 6 minutes a night, can't play in his limited minutes, because at the end of the day, the identity and the culture of your team is set by your best players. So I think that was a huge swing and a miss by Treliving. And I know we weren't like totally against the Ryan Reeves signing. I remember when it first happened, like you said, you know, I'm not high on this. I'm not low on this. Like you were just like, you know, either way, we shouldn't get too hyped up or too low about this signing. It is what it is. But now it just looks like a disaster. And then, like, you know, the news coming out where Reeves was saying how before he was activated off IR, like he was totally healthy, ready to play. The Leafs just kind of refused to activate him because they're like, you suck. We don't want to play you. You make us worse. Like, when he was on the ice at 5-on-5, the Leafs were like, what, -11 or something crazy like that. So
yeah,
that's been a complete disaster. So again, it's just the Ryan Reeves deal is basically like a perfect, it paints a perfect picture of Brad Treliving's offseason. It was just a disaster across the board.
With the Reeves thing and him saying, "Oh, you know, they kept me on IR and I was ready to go," but what I find kind of hilarious is that he went on in that conversation to say that he can't play without knee braces and his kneecaps fall out if he doesn't wear them. It's like, well, then you shouldn't be playing in the National Hockey League.
Why did we sign Ryan
Exactly.
Reeves?
3 years. Way to go. And here I was talking about this amazing intel we have and how we go through everything like a fine-tooth comb. Crazy.
Yeah, that's pathetic, man. If the Leafs, like, I mean, take his age out of the equation. If they knew about like all these knee issues and just his injury issues in general, why the hell are you giving this guy a 3-year deal? Because Lepore, clearly no other team in the league was offering this guy a 3-year deal. I think there was a lot of 1-year deals.
Oh,
There must have been maybe 1 or 2 2-year deals. And then Brad probably came in the room and he's like, you know what? We need this guy. Our culture stinks. We have no intensity. We need someone to rub off on this core 4. 3-year deal for Ryan Reeves, 37 years old, can't play hockey. And I mean, he made his own bed, Brad Treliving here. Like, this is terrible.
So confusing. And it's funny, like I just finished saying that, okay, there's the clean slate this offseason because that's what the books tell us. If this happens again, I can't believe I'm saying this, but is it possible that this guy could be gone in 2 years? Like, he's going to get another kick at the can, but if he goes 0 for 2, no. Like, I'll want Brad out. He's on a hot seat going into next season if this season finishes the way we think it is.
Well, we know what moves he has left. He has the key firing in his back pocket that he could use at any time to buy himself some more time. So that would probably come first. But yeah, I mean, he has a huge opportunity on his hands here in the offseason because a lot of those were obviously 1-year contracts, as we discussed. So there are things that he could do to rectify the situation, but it could also go south in a hurry. Like, if he starts signing middling players and handing out deals like the David Kampf deal, I mean, this could get real bad real quick. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Brendan Shanahan, I still think we aren't giving enough credit to Shanahan just in terms of like how much he kind of like controls the operation. And we talked about this like 3 episodes ago, how MLSE has played such a big role just from the business side of things, wanting to re-sign Matthews, Nylander, and Marner and having these star players under contract for business reasons. So maybe, you know, Shanahan likes having Brad Treliving because like he still gets to kind of run the show. Treliving is obviously the general manager and he's making decisions, but I don't know, maybe Shanahan doesn't want to shake things up unless, of course, it just gets like really bad and he has a repeat of what he just did this past offseason.
Then you got to say, well, now Shanahan, the board's got to look at Shanahan.
Yeah, because he's been kind of sitting pretty during this whole thing. And I think he does
Mm.
deserve more heat, honestly, for how this is all gone. And I think, yeah, I mean, that could be coming down the road as well, because there was so much hype when like Tim Lywicki brought in Brendan Shanahan. Like he brought in Shanahan for the Leafs, Masai Ujiri for the Raptors. There was so much optimism and excitement around these teams. And the Leafs got off to such a great start. They haven't missed the playoffs in the Matthews Marner Nylander era, but now I think the fingers are going to start getting pointed at Shanahan, especially if this continues, Lepore. Like there's a chance that they could figure this out, kind of retool things in the offseason. Who knows? They might even make some splashes at the trade deadline, but Shanahan could be on the hot seat sooner rather than later.
What is more likely? The Leafs miss the playoffs or Keefe is fired before the end of the season?
Wow. I'm going to say,
well, I guess they're kind of the same because they're probably going to miss the
yeah,
playoffs if he loses his job. But
I'm going to say Keefe getting fired is probably more likely. I just think because again, like that's the bullet that Treliving has to use. He could just be like, well, you know what? If things are like really trending in the wrong direction, then I'm just gonna fire Keefe and buy myself some time here.
yeah,
But yeah, they're tied together, right? Like if the Leafs are gonna fire Keefe, they're probably gonna miss the playoffs. I would like to think that none of those things will happen this year, but I mean it's possible.
it's tough for Keefe, even if they go in the first round. That's
Yeah,
tough.
if they
That's
lose in
tough.
the first round to, I don't know, if they lose to any of these teams, Florida,
Yeah, no,
Tampa,
we got to move
he's
on.
he's probably gone, right?
Yeah.
Especially if like the star players kind of, I don't know, like is it Keefe's fault if Matthews, Marner, and Nylander don't show up in the first round?
Yeah, but I think we're past that. I think you get to a point in your life as a coach. And when I say that, I'm referring to your life with a certain team where you've been there long enough that when there's a failure, you don't really need an explanation. It's just time to move on. And I think if this season was to end that way for the Leafs, I like Keefe and I think he's a good coach. And I don't necessarily think a different coach would get a better result. But I would just kind of say, yeah, he's been here long enough now. It's time for us to try something else.
Yeah, it gets to that point where the coach has like run his course and you just need a new voice. You need to shake things up a little bit. It's the easiest thing to do, right?
Mm,
And you know me, I've been like a big Sheldon Key fan from day one. Now, there have been some things recently that have kind of frustrated me. The way he's deployed the lineup at times, the constant tinkering. It just seems that this team hasn't really, they keep trying to play the same way, and I don't know. There's a lot of things that have frustrated me recently, but when you look at the bigger picture, like his winning percentage and all that stuff, it's pretty good, except for the playoffs. But I do agree with you. I think it gets to a point where it's like, okay, we've seen enough of this. It's time to move on to another coach. Um, kind of like the Edmonton Oilers, Lepore,
yeah.
who moved on from Jay Woodcroft, and now they're one of the best teams in the NHL. 14-game winning streak.
Pretty good.
This is one of the greatest in-season turnarounds I think we've ever seen.
Oh, for sure. Well, St. Louis a few years ago, but yeah, this is getting there.
Like everyone points to St. Louis where they were like dead last, and I don't know how many games into the season it was. And there was like the big thing there was they got Binnington, right? Like they called
Yeah,
up Binnington from the AHL, and then he had like a 927 save percentage the rest of the season.
of
The
course.
same thing is kind of happening with the Oilers, except they didn't get a new goalie. Like Stuart Skinner just went from being terrible to now having like a 925 save percentage over the last like 30 plus games. Because when you looked at the underlying numbers at the start of the season, even though the Oilers were 2-9-1, they were like outplaying opponents. The underlying numbers were pretty good. They just couldn't get a save. Now, they were having like defensive breakdowns and like their body language and just the mood around the team was like complete dog shit. But man, oh man, the turnaround this team has made, and we talked about it on the last show. Like we are both in agreement that they are Canada's best chance of winning the Stanley Cup. And if you look at any major sports book right now, you'll see that the Edmonton Oilers have the shortest odds to win it all. Like they are literally the betting favorite right now to win the Stanley Cup. But saying all that, Lepore, like what are your thoughts on this 14 game winning streak? Because they've had kind of a soft schedule.
Yeah.
Haven't played the greatest teams during this streak, but hey, they've gone 14-0-0. So credit where credit is due. But what are your thoughts right now on this insane run by the Edmonton Oilers?
Yeah, I saw that discussion regarding the strength of the teams they've played. I would think that argument could maybe hold up if, say, they went 9-2-3 in those 14 games. And it was like, oh, they're going 9-2-3. Yeah, but look who they're playing. No, to go 14-0, to not have a single hiccup, a single night where, you don't take an opponent seriously or you run into a hot goalie or bad luck, it's unreal. And like you said, this is one of the craziest things we've ever seen. And at what point is it going to stop? And you think of it, if they get to 20 games, that's 25% of the season straight that you've won. We haven't seen it. I think the last one was the last similar run was the Hamburglar run for the Senators when they went like 22-3 in their last 25 games to get into the playoffs. And like the Oilers are even better than that because they haven't lost at all. I don't know, man. Like you mentioned the Skinner thing. And is it a case kind of, and I don't want to jinx it, comparing it to Sammy's last two games where you said it, Skinner was atrocious. Bad. Everything was going in. And with the way he was playing and their other goalies for that matter, they couldn't win. It's impossible, right? Is it simply he wasn't that bad? Meaning that it was just a really, really bad stretch. And when I say not that bad, matching his save percentage. Because I'm sure I assume wasn't he like in the mid 800s?
Yeah,
And
I
it's like
think he
what?
had an 860 something save percentage. Like it was terrible. Although
Right.
his goals saved above expected were egregious.
Okay.
I think it was like worst in the NHL. So
Okay.
again, I wasn't watching like when I was watching Oilers games, I wasn't necessarily like watching him specifically, and I'm not a goalie expert. I couldn't tell you like, if he was like poor positionally and like just foundationally if there was just like something wrong with his play. But holy shit, to go from like an 860 save percentage to having like a 925 over the last 30 plus games, that's been the difference. Like, I don't think Chris
Exactly.
Knobloch has come in and like completely changed their defensive structure. I think they're just getting a lot more saves. I know it's very simple to say that, but I think that's basically what's happening here.
Yeah, and there's no rules with that stuff. As much as people like to look at small sample sizes of things, if a goalie is a 900 goalie, it doesn't mean he goes 900 every single month for the entire season. He'll go 950, he'll go 850, he'll go 875, 925, 900, and then at the end of the year, yeah, he's a 900 goalie. And that may have just been the case with Skinner, that he wasn't that as bad as that save percentage was saying, and now he's not as good as this save percentage is saying, but he's in the middle, and it just looks drastic because it happened all in one shot. And like I said, the Sammy's last two games, what, 1 goal in 2 games, 60-something shots, I think they said. I mean, you're putting up numbers like that doesn't take long to turn your save percentage around. So maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but the data is there. It's just now he's stopping pucks and nothing changed in Skinner's DNA over the last couple of weeks that all of a sudden he became Patrick Waugh meets Marty Brodeur. So I don't know. The thing is at this point, and again with the winning streak, they're confident. And I'm sure he's confident. So now you start playing above yourself, right? I'm not expecting them to slow down. I'm not saying they're going to win like 30 in a row, but I think we're going to continue to talk about this Oilers unbeaten run.
Well, when you look at their upcoming schedule, they can rip off a few more wins here because they got Chicago tonight. Like we're recording this podcast right now on Thursday night.
What's the money line on that?
Oh Jesus, I gotta go check.
Check.
Give me 1 second to check this out here.
No, keep going. I'll check who their schedule is.
I'm looking at the odds
minus 630.
Yeah, there you go.
That's
I'm looking
pushing a
at
record.
Pinnacle. They're minus 588. But yeah, minus 630. Jesus.
I don't think I've ever seen that more than like you.
That's got to be one of the heaviest favorites of the entire season. And what's crazy is that usually the puck line in hockey is 1.5 goals.
Oh
So,
God.
whether you're taking the favorite to win by 2 goals or you're taking the underdog to cover the spread, I'm looking at Pinnacle right now. The Oilers are minus 2.5 on the puck line. Like, this is extremely rare in NHL betting to see a team minus 2.5 on the puck line. But the Blackhawks are terrible, and the Oilers right now look like the best team in hockey.
And
So
Chicago's got injuries even. Like, they have no
yeah,
lineup. Well, someone was pointing out that they have injuries, but nobody on LTIR because they have to stay at the floor.
yeah,
They're that bad.
yeah. The Blackhawks are in a rough spot. But what's been so impressive to me during this Oilers run is that Connor McDavid is not going like supernova. Like when you look at the NHL scoring leaderboard right now, Nathan McKinnon and
What a
Nikita
beast.
Kucherov have been ridiculous. They're both leading the way. They both have over 30 goals, over 80 points. Like McKinnon, 82 points at 48 games. Kucherov, very quietly, has 80 points in 47 games. But
Shit.
Connor McDavid, 17 goals and 60 points in 41 games. I know he had an injury and he missed a chunk of time. Like he's played 41 games compared to the rest of these guys who have played like 47, 48. But to only see McDavid at 60 points, sitting ninth in the NHL in scoring, and then Leon Draisaitl, 51 points in 43 games. So in the past, like we've seen Draisaitl and McDavid like 1-2 in scoring, going
Way
on a
better.
tear every single night. But right now, like, not that they're not playing well, they're obviously playing well, but they're not, in God mode like we've seen them in the past. So
Well,
that's been pretty
they don't have
impressive.
to be. They don't have to be. Zach Hyman is.
Yeah, exactly. Zach Hyman
Like,
on pace to score over 50 goals.
oh
Guy
my
in
God.
Toronto had stone hands, and now he's like one of the best players in hockey this season.
Yeah, it became Mike Bossy.
Unbelievable. But yeah, that's been one of the most impressive things to me is that those guys haven't had to go crazy. Like defensively, their numbers over this streak, like they're, I believe, second in the league behind Winnipeg in goals against during this crazy, not even just the 14-game winning streak. Like the Oilers are 25-6 over their last 31 games. They're top two in goals per game, top two in goals against. The power play's been good. Like you just go across the board. They've just been an absolute wagon over the last 31 games. But saying that, Lepore, who would you take right now to
Bum bum
win
bum.
the Western Conference? Because we can look at the odds for that as well. First, I'll let you give your take. If you had to pick one team right now, like, would you take the Oilers or would you take the Field at this point to win the West and get to the Cup final?
I get the field. I'm not going to go that far, Bruno.
No, okay.
But
We don't have to do Oilers versus the Field, but
I take the
which
field.
team would you pick out right now?
I'd pick Colorado.
Yeah.
I watched their game last night against Washington. That's a really good team, man. Cale Makar, okay. The goal he scored, he got the puck in the neutral zone, cruised through, made a move when he got over the blue line, and just wired a shot to score. He just got that puck and said to everyone, "Get the fuck out of the way. I'm better than all of you." It was so easy what he did. And then McKinnon, obviously, with 4 goals, just like absolutely insane. I just think Colorado's got a lot of mojo. A lot of mojo. They look really, really good. And I'll bet on the team that's won before. So even if, say, Edmonton played Vegas in the playoffs, even at that point, I'd still say, you know what, it's 50-50 because I know Vegas can do it. Edmonton's got to show me. So as fantastic as Edmonton's been, I'm not going to pick them to even win the West. And that's not me saying I wouldn't be surprised if they did because I think they're a fantastic team and they look unbelievable. But if I'm going to put a wager on it, I'm going to bet on who I've seen do it before.
No, I'm right there with you. Not to make this a boring segment, but Colorado was my team as well. I know we talked about this segment before we came onto the show today, but we didn't tell each other who we would pick to win the Western Conference. I'm picking Colorado as well for a lot of the same reasons. They've obviously done it. They've made deep playoff runs. They've won a cup. They've dummied this Oilers team in the playoffs. And I know that was a different version of the Oilers. But I think back to even the comments that Sheldon Keefe made after the Avalanche came back to beat the Leafs when the Leafs were leading Colorado 3-0 after the first period. He said, when McKinnon's line is on the ice with Devon Taves and Cale Makar, it's like you're playing a different sport. It's higher than the NHL. Now, you could say, well, Colorado is lacking depth, and that's true. They don't have as much depth as they had in previous seasons, especially when you look at their cup run. But man, the high-end talent on that roster with the experience, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to bet against the Avalanche, but when you look at the odds right now, the Oilers on Pinnacle plus 350 are the favorites to win the West. Colorado right behind them at plus 394. So very close right now. And then if you had to guess, who do you think is next on the betting board?
In the West?
In the West.
Vegas?
Close. They're fourth.
Not Dallas.
Dallas is fifth.
Who am I forgetting then? Oh, Vancouver?
They're sixth.
Winnipeg?
Winnipeg right now, third.
Sorry, Jets fans. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. No one believes in the Jets.
You know what? I'll just say it. I forgot how good the Jets are. When I was just thinking of the teams in the West, I forgot how good the Jets are. Props to the Jets. No, I'm okay with that.
And I think I'm pretty confident that with Connor Hellebuck in net, the Jets are probably going to beat the Leafs in Winnipeg before the All-Star break.
Yeah, why not? And it'll be a shutout to end the streak so everyone can talk about it and how they almost did it the other night. That streak is crazy.
Outrageous.
If you look, they posted it a couple weeks back when they were at 180. They're at 180. The Bruins are second, and they're at like 60. And then every other team's, like 30, 25. The Leafs are going to go. If the Leafs go the rest of this season, they're going to be what? 3 full seasons almost without being shut out. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty insane stretch. But if there's any team that's going to shut out the Leafs, it's probably going to be the Jets, and not just because, the last game ended 1-0. Mostly because they have Connor Hellebuck and they're the best defensive team in hockey.
Yeah.
So it's going to be probably going to be a low scoring game, that final game heading into the All-Star break. But I think the Jets deserve respect just for how good they are defensively under Rick Bowness and with the best goalie in the world right now. But again, I'm not taking the Jets to beat Colorado in a 7-game series. I'm not taking them to beat Edmonton. And that's the way that I look at it. Like, which team would I pick in a 7-game series? And right now, I'd pick Colorado against any team in the West in a 7-game series. It just comes down to that. Whereas earlier in the podcast, we were talking about teams that the Leafs could beat in a 7-game series.
Yeah, we're doing the
Conference.
opposite.
And holy shit. Yeah, it's not great. It is not great. But, is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
Just looking forward to the All-Star game this year. I don't say that very often, but little different. The draft, the quote unquote celebrities. There's money to be won in the skills competition. We went over that a few weeks ago. So I'm not gonna sit here and say I'll be absolutely glued to the television set, but I'll have it on and I'll watch more than I have in the past.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the skills competition. 12 of the best players in the world going for $1 million. I'm going to throw out a take. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to say that William Nylander wins the skills competition, or at least gets very close to winning the skills competition. I know everyone's saying like McDavid and McKinnon and even Matthews, like those are the easy answers, but Willie Stiles, man, he's got some insane skills when you think about his ability to shoot, to skate, stick handle. Like there's some competitions that are right in his wheelhouse. So I'm going to say he shocks the world and wins the skills competition.
I might go Jack Hughes.
Ooh, I like that too. I might
go Jack Hughes. He can do everything. He's one of those guys, right? So
yeah, he's smooth, man. He can do it all as well. So yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun, especially because they're all going for $1 million. So I think the players are actually going to try this year, which will be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it should be an awesome time in Toronto. I am not attending anything. So I will not be boots on the ground at Scotiabank Arena.
Oh, you're not willing to sell your house for a ticket to the
Yeah,
2024
exactly.
All-Star?
I'm not taking on a mortgage to go see the skills competition or the All-Star game.
Have you seen prices anywhere? 'Cause my nephew's like, "Oh, Zio, can we go to the All-Star game?" I don't even have to look. I'm like, "Buddy, it's in Toronto."
I
I
haven't
know.
even bothered looking at prices because they're probably outrageous.
Yeah, see, when it was in Ottawa way back, I remember at the start tickets were crazy, but demand kind of went down as you got closer to the game. Because I think people kind of realize, even like the skills competition, if you're sitting in the third bowl watching the skills competition, yeah, it's in your city, go, but like I wouldn't pay a lot to see that. And even as far as the game goes, if you're sitting close, that's amazing to see all the players. But if you're sitting in, up in the second bowl, third bowl, nosebleeds, meh. And then again, I'm not saying I wouldn't go. I'm saying I wouldn't pay a lot to
Yeah,
watch a shinny game, to watch a shinny game with a bunch of NHL players.
yeah. If there's one event I want to be at this weekend, it's no doubt about it. It's the skills competition.
Yeah.
12 guys going for $1 million, a format that we've never seen before. Where, like I said, where you would think that these guys are going to try hard to actually win.
Mm,
That's the event you want to watch
yeah.
on All-Star Weekend. But that is going to do it for episode 131 of the Gluttons for Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you're a new listener or a longtime listener and you really enjoyed this episode, it would do wonders for us if you give us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you really enjoyed today's content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with who you think is going to win the skills competition. And while you're at it, ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So for Michael Lepore, I'm Anthony Bruno. Go Leafs, go, I guess. Until the next one, enjoy All-Star Weekend, enjoy the Leafs' final game before the break, and we will chat very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
我妈妈跟他是有秀。